Welcome to the Survivor to Thriver show with your happiness expert, Samia Bano. Are you a survivor of abuse or other trauma? Are you tired of feeling stuck, silent, and stressed all the time? This is the podcast people from all over the world join in to learn exactly how to stop suffering and start living with more inner peace and joy. Are you ready to eliminate suffering from your life and transform from a survivor to thriver? Then congratulations, you are in the right place. Let's get started. Hey, welcome back to the Survivor to Thriver show. We have been talking about how to act in the face of our fears. And today we're going to continue to talk about component number 2 of 3. Component number 1 being making the decision, the intention, the commitment to feel the fear and do the deed anyway. That's my definition of acting with courage. And acting with courage is component number 1. Component number 2 that we're going to continue to talk about today is responding to ourselves with compassion and empathy. And then component number 3 is shifting our focus from the problem or the challenge that we're facing to generating more peace and joy in our life. So the other way to rephrase, shifting our focus from the problem, which is in this context the fear that we're feeling, to the solutions for how we can resolve that fear and resolve it in a way that generates more peace and joy in our life. Okay? So that's component number 3. But today, we're going to just continue to talk about component number 2. So, yesterday, when we started talking about component number 2, which is, I was saying that when you are in the grips of your fear, and especially when you're in the grips of your fear and it's on the more intense side, what does not work is blaming and shaming, right? Because that is much more likely to get you stuck in a negative downward spiral. So that you feel afraid, you feel bad because you're feeling afraid, then you blame and shame yourself, which makes you feel even worse. And when you feel worse, it compromises your sense of self-esteem, it's compromising your self of confidence and your hope of being able to get out of it, to deal with your fear effectively and so forth. So then you feel even worse and even more afraid. When you feel worse and you feel more afraid, you feel more worse, which, then you blame and shame yourself more, and then you feel worse, and then you blame and shame yourself more, and then you feel worse again, and you feel more afraid. Just a terrible, terrible cycle that you can get stuck in if you begin to blame and shame yourself, okay? So just don't go there. Just don't go there. It's far more effective to respond to yourself with empathy and compassion instead, right? Because then you don't have to waste, and it really is a waste of your time and energy to be fighting with yourself. To, be like the blaming and the shaming is really you're spending your time and energy fighting with yourself. Why are you doing that? Why do you want to spend your time and energy fighting with yourself? And it's not spending your time, honestly. It's just wasting your time. Instead, if you focus on responding to yourself with empathy and compassion, which allows you to feel heard, to feel respected, to feel accepted, to feel loved, you will be able to much more quickly shift away from the negative mindset into a more positive mindset. And as you shift into the positive mindset, you will find that your fear begins to resolve itself, or at least begins to decrease in its intensity. And as the fear begins to decrease in intensity, then you're able to better focus on problem solving, on coming up with more creative, more effective solutions, on listening to others' feedback that they might be offering you, right? This is the key. This is the key, even more than the first component, to really moving beyond just surviving, to really thriving in your life. Okay? And remember, this is a survivor to thriver show. And I'm a happiness expert. I don't want to be just talking to you about how you can just survive in your life, how you can just barely get through, barely manage to deal with whatever challenge you're facing, in this case, fear. I want to share with you the best practices that not only help you overcome and deal with the challenge that you're dealing with, but to come out of it feeling stronger, better, more empowered, and experiencing more inner peace and joy. Because that's what thriving is all about. Okay? So, with that in mind, let me share with you a different way of looking at what you're experiencing. And this is a mindset shift that I learned and that I experienced. And once I learned this and I experienced this mindset shift, it has changed my life. It has absolutely changed my life for the better. Okay, so I'm so excited to be sharing it with you right now. And this mindset shift is centered and focused around the idea of recognizing the gift of your fear. The gift of your fear. Yes, you heard me. The gift of your fear. What gift? Okay, well, you receive the gift of your fear when, first of all, the first thing, you recognize, you acknowledge, you accept that whenever you feel afraid, there is a good, valid reason why you're feeling afraid. You're not going crazy. There's nothing wrong with you for feeling the fear that you're feeling. There is always a good reason why you're feeling the way you're feeling. Okay? That's number one. To realize this, to recognize this. Now, if this is true, if there's always a good reason why you're feeling what you're feeling, and you're still blaming and shaming yourself, it's probably because you don't understand the reason why you're feeling the way you're feeling. That you're not in touch with the underlying root, the underlying need, the underlying unmet need, I should say, because of which this fear has been generated. So, to give you a quick example, again in the context of my story, the fear I struggled with for 12 years before I achieved my breakthrough of breaking the silence around being a survivor of child sexual abuse was the fear of being hurt again, of being taken advantage of again. If I opened up to someone, if I allow myself to be vulnerable, what if somebody took advantage of me again? That was my fear. And over the course of those 12 years, when this fear ruled and dictated my life, I subjected myself to a lot of blaming and shaming and guilt trips. And that was because I didn't fully connect with the reason why I was feeling this fear. I didn't fully understand, right? So the reason I came to eventually recognize that the reason I had this fear was because I had an unmet need. And my unmet need was the need to be safe, to feel safe and protected. And in the aftermath of being abused by someone that I loved and trusted, it was a very natural reaction for me to have my sense of safety compromised and for me to develop this intense need to protect myself and to be safe, right? So I had a good, valid reason why I was feeling that fear. And the need itself was a very valid need. We all have a right to be safe. We all deserve to be safe. I had a right to be safe. I deserve to be safe. And when myself felt that safety threatened, that sense of safety compromised, it did the best it could to help me get back to a place of feeling safe. And the best solution it could come up with at that time was to engulf me in the silence. Because it's like the reasoning was, again, of my 8-year-old self at that time, that, hey, if we don't talk about it, if, and we don't talk about how we're feeling and what we're thinking, we don't let people into our life, then they can't hurt us. And, hey, actually, that was pretty effective in its way in keeping me safe and protected. The problem that occurred was that even though the strategy was effective to some extent, it had a very unfortunate side effect, right? And that unfortunate side effect was that it isolated me and it cut me off from being able to have the kind of deep, meaningful connections, relationships that I also deserved and needed and wanted to have in my life. But once I recognized this, I was like, oh, okay. So there was nothing wrong with me for going into the silence. that was just the best solution I could come up with at that time. But it's just that that solution is not the best solution anymore, right? Because of this unfortunate side effect. So all I really have to do is figure out another solution that will allow me to stay safe and feel safe and protected, and at the same time help me to also meet my need to create more deeper, meaningful connections with people. Nice. Awesome. I can do that, right? I can do that. Okay, so the key to my creating that mindset shift was me responding to myself with compassion and empathy. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and wrap up today's episode right here. We'll pick up right where we're leaving off tomorrow. And in the meanwhile, remember, you can always go to my website at www.academyofthriving.com to connect with me with your questions, your comments, feedback. I love to hear from you. And also remember that now our show is on iTunes. So if you have an iTunes account, please go and leave us a 5-star rating on iTunes and help other people to find the show more easily. Until I see you tomorrow, I wish you lots of peace and joy.